Commander Vextar stood before the massive display screen in the Zephyrian Deep Space Monitoring Station. The blue glow of distant stars filled the darkness around him as he studied the data streaming across his terminal. His forearms moved quickly over the controls. Pulling up reports from the Outer Rim Scouts. Sir, we have confirmed readings from the Sol system, reported Lieutenant Kefal, her voice carrying through the bridge's communication system. The species there has achieved faster-than-light travel. Vextar's compound eyes focused on the incoming data. According to their records, this human species had only discovered electricity less than 200 of their years ago. Now they were traveling between stars. It was unusually fast progress even by galactic standards. Show me their technology assessments, Vextar commanded, the main screen filled with images of human spacecraft. They looked crude and bulky compared to Zephyrian vessels. Thick metal hulls, visible exhaust ports, and what appeared to be welding marks along the joints. Their weapon systems seemed equally primitive. Kinetic projectiles that fired metal slugs, fusion bombs that relied on simple nuclear reactions, and energy shields that barely covered their ships. Their planet appears to be divided into multiple governments, Kefal continued. They call themselves the United Earth Coalition, but our scans show this unity is very recent. They seem to have formed it only after developing space travel. Vextar nodded. This was typical behavior for young species. They usually fought among themselves until they realized there were bigger threats in the galaxy. Then they would try to unite, often too late to matter. What about their military capabilities? He asked. Another officer, Subcommander Threndok, stepped forward. His scales shifted color slightly, indicating mild amusement. Laughable, sir. They have no quantum weapons, no psionic abilities, and their largest ships are smaller than our scout vessels. Their population is entirely biological. No cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications for combat. The War Council chamber buzzed with quiet conversation as other officers reviewed the data. Most seemed to agree with Threndok's assessment. These humans appeared to be just another primitive species that had stumbled into space travel through luck, rather than true advancement. But senior analyst Kethmos raised one of his hands for attention. The elderly Zephyrian had served in intelligence for over 40 cycles, and his experience commanded respect. Commander, there is something unusual in their communications, Kethmos said, his voice careful and measured. I have been monitoring their military channels, and there are repeated references to something they call the Invaders protocol. What kind of protocol? Vextar asked. That is the problem, sir. Every time this protocol is mentioned, their communications immediately become encrypted with methods we cannot break. Their military channels go completely silent. I have tried to gather more information, but it seems to be classified at their highest levels. Threndok laughed, a sound like grinding stone. They probably have some primitive nuclear weapons they think are secret, or perhaps some kind of biological weapon, nothing we have not seen before from young species. But Kethmos shook his head. Sir, with respect, this feels different. I have monitored many species during first contact situations. Usually their secret weapons are mentioned in panic or desperation. These humans speak of this protocol with calmness, as if it is simply another tool they keep ready. Vextar considered this information. In his 50 cycles of military service, he had overseen the integration of 12 different species into the Confederation. Some had fought desperately with everything they had. Others had tried to hide their best weapons until the last moment. But none had ever maintained such complete silence about their capabilities. Perhaps they have nothing to hide, suggested another officer. Maybe this protocol is just emergency evacuation procedures or government continuity plans. Possible, Kethmos agreed. But I recommend caution. There are other anomalies in their behavior patterns, such as, Vextar asked, their response to our probe ships, sir. Most species either panic or immediately try to communicate when they detect unknown vessels in their system. The humans did neither. They simply watched. They tracked our ships, recorded everything, but made no attempt to contact us or flee. The bridge fell silent as the officers considered this. Vextar had to admit it was unusual behavior. Fear and curiosity were the most common responses to first contact. Passive observation suggested either supreme confidence or careful planning. Show me their population centers, Vextar ordered. The screen displayed Earth's major cities. Millions of humans lived in massive structures that stretched toward the sky. Their technology appeared inconsistent. Some areas showed advanced energy systems while others still relied on primitive combustion methods. It was as if different parts of their civilization had developed at different rates. Their industrial capacity, he asked. Significant but inefficient, Threndok replied. They could probably build a modest defense fleet if given time, but nothing that could challenge our battle group. Military structure? Fragmented. Each government maintains its own forces, though they seem to be trying to coordinate under this United Earth coalition. Their soldiers are entirely biological, no enhancements. They rely on external tools and vehicles rather than improving themselves. This was another mark against humanity in Zephyrian military thinking. Species that refused to enhance themselves with technology or genetic modification were considered weak and backward. The Zephyrians had long ago accepted cybernetic implants and biological modifications as necessary for military effectiveness. Recommendation? Vextar asked his council. Standard integration protocol, Threndok said immediately. Arrive in force, demand surrender. Offer them the choice of integration or destruction. They will likely surrender quickly once they see our capabilities. Most of the other officers nodded in agreement. It was the standard approach that had worked with dozens of species across the galaxy. Show overwhelming force, give them a chance to submit peacefully, then proceed based on their response. But Kethmos remained silent, his compound eyes studying the data streams that continued to flow across his console. You disagree, analyst? Vextar asked. I'm uncertain, sir. These humans are difficult to read. Their communication suggests they are preparing for something, but I cannot determine what. They are moving resources, reorganizing their military structures, and conducting what appear to be large-scale training exercises, but none of it follows normal defensive patterns. Fear makes species act strangely, Threndok said dismissively. They probably know we are coming and are panicking. Perhaps, Kethmos said. But panic usually creates chaos. These humans are displaying remarkable coordination for a supposedly primitive species. Vextar made his decision. The Confederation had faced thousands of species over the millennia, and the pattern was always the same. Superior technology and overwhelming force convinced most to surrender. Those who chose to fight were quickly defeated and then integrated anyway. Prepare the third battle fleet, he commanded. We will proceed with standard integration protocol. Analyst Kethmos, continue monitoring their communications. I want to know immediately if this mysterious protocol is activated. As the bridge crew began preparing for departure, Kethmos remained at his station, watching the streams of human communication flowing past his screens. Something about these humans bothered him, but he could not identify what. They were too calm, too organized, too prepared for contact with a superior alien force. In his experience, species that felt genuinely outmatched either panicked or tried to hide. These humans were doing neither. They were simply waiting. And that worried him more than any weapon they might possess. The Zephyrian Third Battle Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 50 massive warships materialized in the darkness, their hulls gleaming with the advanced metals and energy fields that marked them as products of a civilization thousands of years more advanced than anything Earth had produced. Commander. Vextar stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching as his sensors painted a picture of the human system. Earth hung like a blue and green jewel in the void, surrounded by several smaller planets and a network of space stations and mining operations. Human vessels are moving to intercept, reported Lieutenant Kepal. 43 ships of various sizes. Vextar studied the approaching human fleet through his tactical display. Their ships looked even more primitive up close. Thick armor plating, visible weapon mounts, and exhaust trails that glowed against the starfield. Compared to the sleek, almost organic curves of Zephyrian vessels, they looked like crude metal boxes with engines attached. Open communication channels, Vextar ordered. The main screen flickered, then displayed the bridge of what appeared to be the human flagship. A human female in a dark blue uniform sat in the command chair, her face calm and focused. Behind her, other humans worked at control stations that looked bulky and mechanical compared to Zephyrian neural interfaces. I am Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Coalition, the human said. Her voice was steady, showing no signs of fear or panic. You are in Earth space without permission. Vextar stepped forward, allowing the human to see his full form. 4 arms, compound eyes, and the ceremonial armor that marked his rank. Most species found Zephyrians intimidating on first sight. "I am Commander Vexitar of the Zephyrian Confederation," he replied. "I speak for an alliance of over 200 civilized worlds. Your species has developed faster than light travel and must now choose your path." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. No widening of eyes, no stepping back. No visible reaction to learning that Earth faced a massive interstellar alliance. This was unusual. Most species showed some shock at the scale of what they faced. "What choice are you offering?" she asked. "Integration into the Confederation as a protected species," Vexitar said, delivering the standard terms. "You will receive advanced technology, medical improvements, and protection from hostile forces. In return, you will provide resources and labor as directed by Confederation oversight. And if we refuse, then your species will be removed as a threat to galactic stability." This was the moment when most species either surrendered immediately or began making desperate threats. Vexitar waited for the expected response. Admiral Chen was quiet for several seconds, apparently considering the offer. Finally, she nodded slowly. "We accept integration," she said. "However, we need 72 hours to prepare our population for this transition." Vexitar blinked in surprise. He had expected either immediate surrender or defiant resistance. This calm acceptance with a simple request for time was not in any of his previous experiences. "What kind of preparation?" he asked. "Moving civilian populations to safe areas, shutting down industrial operations that might be dangerous during the transition, and briefing our military forces on the new situation," Admiral Chen replied. "Surely you understand that such a major change requires some coordination." It seemed reasonable. Vexitar had overseen similar transitions before, and there were always logistical challenges in managing primitive populations during integration. 72 hours, he agreed. "Any attempt to flee the system or contact outside forces will result in immediate action." "Understood," Admiral Chen said. The communication ended. Sub-Commander Threndok approached Vexitar's command station. "That was surprisingly easy, sir. Most species require more convincing. Perhaps they truly understand the futility of resistance," Vexitar replied. But something about the human admiral's demeanor bothered him. She had been too calm, too prepared for this conversation. Over the next days, Zephyrian scouts reported strange activity throughout the human system. Military installations were being evacuated, but not in the chaotic manner expected from a panicking population. Instead, humans moved with organized efficiency, following what appeared to be pre-planned procedures. "Sir, the humans are withdrawing their fleet from defensive positions," reported Kefal. "They are moving toward Earth rather than maintaining a perimeter." This was even more unusual. Species that planned to fight typically spread their forces to make invasion more difficult. Species that planned to surrender usually kept their military in visible positions to demonstrate compliance. "What about their population centers?" Vexitar asked. "Massive movement of civilians underground, sir. But again, it appears organized rather than panicked. They seem to have extensive underground facilities prepared." Senior Analyst Kethmos looked up from his monitoring station. "Commander, I am detecting unusual communication patterns. The humans are transmitting massive amounts of data between their facilities, but it is all heavily encrypted." "Military coordination for the surrender?" suggested Threndok. "Possibly," Kethmos replied, but his tone suggested doubt. "However, the volume of data suggests something more complex than simple evacuation orders." On the second day, reports from Zephyrian scouts became more concerning. Human military units were not just withdrawing, they were dismantling their defensive installations and moving the equipment to unknown locations. Space-based weapons platforms were being taken offline and their components transported to the planet's surface. "Are they destroying their weapons to show compliance?" Vexitar wondered aloud. "Unknown, sir," Kefal replied. "Our sensors cannot penetrate their underground facilities to determine what they are doing with the equipment." Most disturbing was the behavior of the human population itself. Rather than the fear and confusion typical during alien invasion, humans seemed to be following detailed instructions with remarkable calm. Children were moved to specific locations, adults reported to designated facilities, and essential services continued operating without interruption. "It is as if they have practiced this before," observed Kethmos. "Practiced what?" asked Threndok. "Surrendering to alien invasion?" "Practiced something," Kethmos replied slowly. "These are not the actions of a species facing unexpected conquest. These are the actions of a species implementing a predetermined plan. On the third day, with only hours remaining in the agreed time frame, Vextar made a decision that would prove to be the greatest mistake of his military career. "Begin the occupation," he ordered. "The humans have had sufficient time to prepare." The Zephyrian fleet moved toward Earth, expecting to find a submissive population ready for integration. Their advanced sensors detected no military resistance, no hidden weapons, no attempts to flee or fight. Instead, they found humans waiting, in underground facilities, in abandoned military bases, in civilian areas that had been quietly evacuated. Humans watched the alien ships approach. They had spent 72 hours not preparing to surrender, but preparing to learn. Every Zephyrian ship movement had been recorded. Every energy signature had been analyzed. Every communication frequency had been monitored and decoded. Human scientists had worked around the clock, studying their soon-to-be conquerors with the focused intensity that had carried their species from caves to stars in just a few thousand years. Admiral Chen sat in a command center deep beneath the Earth's surface, watching her screens as Zephyrian troops began landing in major population centers. Around her, teams of analysts processed the final streams of data about alien technology, biology, and behavior patterns. "How long until the first phase is complete?" she asked. 18 hours, Admiral," replied Dr. Sarah Martinez, the head of the Invaders Protocol Research Team. "We have everything we need." Admiral Chen nodded and activated her communication system. "All stations, this is Admiral Chen. The Invaders Protocol is now active. Begin Phase 1. Across Earth, in hidden facilities that the Zephyrians could not detect, the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created began to wake up. But it was not a weapon of destruction. It was something far more terrifying than any bomb or energy beam. It was the human ability to become their enemies. The Zephyrian occupation of Earth proceeded exactly as Commander Vextar had planned. His troops landed at major population centers, established control points, and began the process of cataloging human resources and capabilities. The humans offered no resistance, following directions with the same calm efficiency they had shown during the 3-day preparation period. Vextar established his command center in what the humans called New York City, taking over a large building that housed their global communication networks. From here, he could coordinate the integration of humanity into the Confederation. It should have been routine work, but within the first week, his officers began reporting strange observations. "Sir, the humans are asking unusual questions," reported Captain Mordek, who was overseeing the documentation of human technology. "They want to know how our scanners work, what materials our armor is made from, and how our communication systems function." "Curiosity is normal," Vextar replied. "Primitive species are often fascinated by advanced technology." "Yes, sir, but they are not just asking. They are studying. I have observed humans creating detailed drawings of our equipment, taking measurements when they think we are not watching, and discussing our procedures in their own language." This was mildly concerning, but not unprecedented. Some species tried to learn from their conquerors in hopes of eventually becoming useful enough to earn better treatment. More reports followed. Human scientists were requesting meetings with Zephyrian technical staff. Human doctors wanted to understand Zephyrian biology and medicine. Human military officers asked detailed questions about Confederation, fleet tactics, and strategic doctrine. "They claim they want to better serve the Confederation," reported Lieutenant Kefal. "But the level of detail they seek seems excessive for simple cooperation." Senior analyst Kethmos had been monitoring human communication since the occupation began. His reports grew more troubling each day. "Commander, the humans are transmitting vast amounts of technical data between their facilities," he said during a morning briefing. "Our translation systems can decode their language, but the scientific concepts they discuss are surprisingly advanced." "Such as?" Vextar asked. "Quantum mechanics, genetic engineering, cybernetic integration, energy field manipulation. Topics that should be beyond their current technological level. It is as if they already understand the theoretical foundations of our technology and are simply filling in practical details." Subcommander Threndok dismissed these concerns. "They probably learned these concepts from our equipment. Reverse engineering is common among developing species." But Kethmos shook his head. "Sir, reverse engineering takes months or years. They have been discussing these concepts since the first day of occupation. It is as if they already knew what to look for. On the 10th day, something happened that changed everything. Captain Mordek was conducting a routine inspection of a human research facility that had been converted to study Zephyrian technology. As he entered the main laboratory, he stopped in shock. On the tables were perfect replicas of Zephyrian equipment. Energy weapons, communication devices, armor components, even pieces of spacecraft hull, all recreated with exact precision. Human scientists moved between the tables, testing the devices and making small modifications. "How did you create these?" Mordek demanded. Dr. James Park, the facility director, looked up from a device that appeared to be an improved version of a Zephyrian energy scanner. "We observed your equipment for 10 days. Dr. Park replied calmly. "We analyzed the materials, studied the energy patterns, and determined the manufacturing processes. It was not difficult once we understood the principles." Mordek stared at the recreated technology. This should have been impossible. The devices were not crude copies. They showed the same level of sophistication as original Zephyrian equipment. "How long did this take?" he asked. "About 8 days to understand the basic concepts, 2 days to manufacture working prototypes," Dr. Park said. "We are now working on improvements." Improvements? Dr. Park picked up what looked like a Zephyrian energy weapon, but with additional components attached. "Your designs are efficient, but they could be optimized. We have increased the power output by 12% and reduced energy consumption by 8%. Mordek immediately contacted Commander Vextar. Within an hour, teams of Zephyrian technical experts were examining the human facility. What they found defied their understanding of how primitive species should behave. The humans had not just copied Zephyrian technology, they had improved it. Weapons were more powerful, scanners were more sensitive, communication devices had greater range. In 10 days, they had advanced their understanding of Confederation technology by centuries. "This is impossible," insisted Chief Engineer Veltak. "These improvements require computational capabilities they do not possess." Dr. Park overheard the comment and smiled. "We do not rely entirely on computers for design work. Human intuition and creativity often find solutions that pure logic misses." But the real shock came. 3 days later, Kethmos was monitoring communications when he detected something that made his scales change color in alarm. He immediately contacted Vextar. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," he said, his voice tight with concern. Vextar arrived at the intelligence center to find Kethmos staring at a communication intercept. On the screen was what appeared to be a perfect reproduction of a Zephyrian military report, written in flawless Confederation standard and using proper military terminology. "The humans sent this?" Vextar asked. "Yes, sir, but that is not the concerning part. Look at the sender identification." Vextar examined the data and felt his blood grow cold. The message showed proper Zephyrian military codes, the correct encryption protocols and authentication signatures that matched active Confederation personnel. "How did they obtain these codes?" he demanded. "Sir, I believe they did not obtain them. I believe they generated them." Before Vextar could respond, Lieutenant Keffel rushed into the intelligence center. "Commander, we have a situation in Section 7, she reported breathlessly. "You need to come immediately." Vextar and his staff hurried to Section 7, where they found a crowd of Zephyrian personnel gathered around one of the human work areas. As they approached, the crowd parted to reveal something impossible. Standing among the human workers was a figure that appeared to be a Zephyrian soldier. It had the correct height, the proper scale coloration, 4 functional arms, and compound eyes that tracked movement like any member of their species. But when Vextar looked closer, he noticed subtle differences. The being's movements were slightly more fluid than typical Zephyrian motion. Its compound eyes seemed more alert, more focused. And when it spoke, its voice carried a faint accent that did not match any known Zephyrian dialect. "Commander Vextar," the figure said, offering a proper military salute. "I am Specialist Chendar reporting for duty." Vextar stared at the being in front of him. Everything about it appeared Zephyrian. The body structure, the coloration, the mannerisms, even the proper pronunciation of military terminology. But something felt wrong. "Where are you from, Specialist?" Vextar asked carefully. "I was created in Laboratory 12, sir," the being replied. I am the first successful subject of the Invaders protocol. The words hit Vextar like a physical blow. Around him, his officers stepped back in shock and horror. Created, he whispered. Yes, sir. I was human 72 hours ago. My name was Lieutenant Sarah Chen of the United Earth, Coalition Marine Corps. I volunteered for transformation into your species as part of our integration preparation. The being that had been Sarah Chen reached up and touched something behind its neck. With a soft click, what Vexitar had taken for natural scale patterns separated along invisible seams. Beneath the perfect Zephyrian exterior was the unmistakable pink skin of a human face. The process is reversible, Sarah Chen said in her original human voice. But while transformed, I am functionally Zephyrian in every way that matters. I think like you understand your culture and can operate your technology as naturally as if I were born to it. She reattached the biomask, and once again appeared to be a perfect Zephyrian soldier. How many others? Vextar managed to ask. The first batch was 50 subjects, Sarah Chen replied. But we are accelerating production now that we have confirmed the process works. We should have 500 invaders ready within the week. Vextar looked around at his officers and saw his own horror reflected in their faces. They had not conquered humanity. Humanity had been studying them, learning from them and preparing to become them, and this was only the beginning. Commander Vexistar sat across from Admiral Chen Wei in what had once been the United Nations building. The human leader appeared calm and composed, as if the revelation of the Invaders protocol was simply another routine matter to discuss. Between them, the being who had been Lieutenant Sarah Chen stood at attention, still wearing the perfect disguise of a Zephyrian soldier. Explain this, Vextar demanded, gesturing toward the transformed human. What exactly is this protocol? Admiral Chen folded her hands on the table. The Invaders protocol is humanity's answer to a problem we have faced throughout our history. How to survive when confronted by superior force. By becoming us? Vextar's voice carried a mixture of disgust and fascination. By becoming you, Admiral Chen confirmed. Better than you, if possible. She activated a holographic display that showed images from human history. Vextar saw primitive humans in animal skins, then the same species wearing metal armor, then operating complex machinery. Throughout our development, we have encountered challenges that should have destroyed us, Admiral Chen continued. Ice ages, predators, diseases, hostile environments. Each time we survived not by being stronger or faster or more numerous than our challenges, but by studying them, understanding them, and adapting to overcome them. The display showed more images, humans in different environments wearing different clothing, using different tools. When we encountered wolves, we did not just fight them. We studied them, learned their pack behavior, and eventually turned some of them into dogs that served us. When we faced diseases, we did not just hide from them. We studied them, understood how they worked, and created medicines to defeat them. Vextar watched the progression of human development with growing unease. Each challenge they had faced seemed to make them stronger, rather than weaker. This ability to adapt served us well when we began encountering other human groups, Admiral Chen said. When our people met others with better weapons, we did not just fight them. We learned to make those weapons ourselves, then improved upon them. When we encountered cultures with better organization, we studied their methods and incorporated the best elements into our own society. The holographic display now showed human warfare throughout history. Vextar saw how human armies would adopt the tactics of their enemies, sometimes within a single battle. You steal from those you conquer, Vextar said. We learn from everyone we encounter, Admiral Chen corrected. Whether we conquer them or they conquer us. This is what allowed us to spread across our entire planet, despite being physically weaker than many other species we shared it with. Sub-Commander Threndok, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. But this transformation, this is not simple adaptation. You have changed your very biology to mimic our species. Admiral Chen nodded. The Invaders protocol represents the ultimate expression of human adaptability. We do not just study our challenges, we become them. She gestured to Sarah Chen, who stepped forward. Lieutenant Chen volunteered to be among the first to undergo the transformation process. It involves genetic therapy, surgical modification, cybernetic enhancement, and psychological conditioning. The psychological conditioning is the most important part, Sarah Chen said, speaking in her transformed Zephyrian voice. I do not just look like your species. I think like your species. I understand your cultural values, your military doctrine, your social structures. When I am in this form, I am essentially Zephyrian. Vextar felt a chill run through his body. How is this possible? We have been studying your species since you arrived, Admiral Chen replied. Every interaction with your personnel, every piece of equipment you brought, every communication you sent, all of it was recorded and analyzed. Our scientists mapped your genetics, our psychologists studied your behavior patterns, and our engineers reverse-engineered your technology. She activated another display that showed detailed diagrams of Zephyrian anatomy, psychology profiles, and technical specifications for their equipment. 72 hours was sufficient time to understand your species well enough to begin the transformation process, Admiral Chen said. But we had been preparing for this possibility for much longer. What possibility? Vextar asked, though he dreaded the answer. First contact with a superior alien species, Admiral Chen replied. We knew that eventually we would encounter beings more advanced than ourselves. We could either be destroyed, enslaved, or find a way to survive and prosper. The Invaders protocol ensures survival. Senior analyst Kethmos, who had been quietly observing the conversation, finally spoke. This is why your communications mentioned the protocol before we arrived. You had already prepared for invasion. We had prepared for many possibilities, Admiral Chen confirmed. Invasion was just one of them. The protocol can be adapted for peaceful contact, trade relationships, or military conquest. The basic principle remains the same. Understand the other species so completely that we can become them if necessary. Threndok stood abruptly, his scales shifting to angry red coloration. This is an abomination. You are not truly Zephyrian. You are parasites wearing our form. Sarah Chen looked at him with compound eyes that showed no emotion. I am as Zephyrian as you are while I wear this form. I understand your culture, your values, your way of thinking. In many ways, I may understand them better than you do, because I chose to become Zephyrian rather than simply being born into it. That is impossible, Threndok insisted. Is it? Sarah Chen asked. Tell me, Subcommander, what is the traditional response to a superior officer when questioned about military doctrine? Respectful acknowledgement and request for clarification, Threndok replied automatically. And what is the proper way to honor a fallen comrade in Zephyrian military tradition? Silent salute with all forearms raised, followed by speaking their name 3 times. What is the most important virtue in Zephyrian society? Duty to the collective good above personal interest, Sarah Chen nodded. I know these things not because I was taught them as facts, but because I feel them as truths. When I am in this form, duty to the collective is as important to me as breathing. The honor of fallen comrades moves me to genuine emotion. Respect for military hierarchy is instinctive. She paused, studying Threndok's expression. But I also retain my human perspective, which allows me to see aspects of Zephyrian culture that you might take for granted. This gives me advantages that a born Zephyrian might not possess. Vextar felt the implications of this revelation settling over him like a heavy weight. How many of your people can undergo this transformation? In theory, any healthy adult human can be modified to replicate any species we encounter, Admiral Chen replied. The process takes approximately 72 hours for the initial transformation, though achieving full psychological integration requires additional training. And the limitations? Very few. The subject retains their human memories and perspective while gaining complete understanding of the target species. They can function perfectly within the alien society while also serving human interests. Kethmos leaned forward, his analytical mind working through the implications. This means you could infiltrate any organization, any government, any military force. If necessary, Admiral Chen agreed. But infiltration is only one application. The transformed individuals can also serve as perfect ambassadors, translators, or cultural bridges between species. Vextar stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city where his forces maintained their occupation. But now he wondered how many of the Zephyrian soldiers he could see were actually humans in disguise. You said Lieutenant Chen was from the first batch, he said without turning around. How many others have been transformed? 50 in the initial group, Admiral Chen replied. But production is accelerating. We expect to have 500 completed within the week, and several thousand within the month. Several thousand fake Zephyrians, Threndok said with horror. Several thousand humans who are also perfect Zephyrians. Admiral Chen corrected. They will be indistinguishable from your own people in every way that matters. Vextar turned back to face the human admiral. What do you want from us? Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time, Vextar saw something predatory in her expression. We want to join your confederation, she said, as equals, not as a subordinate species. And we want to help you solve your military challenges in ways you have never considered possible. Such as, imagine having perfect spies who can infiltrate any enemy species. Imagine having diplomats who truly understand alien cultures from the inside. Imagine having soldiers who can adapt to become whatever the mission requires. Admiral Chen stood and walked to her own window. The Invaders protocol is not just a defensive measure, Commander. It is humanity's gift to the galaxy. The ability to become anyone, understand everyone, and bridge any divide between species. She turned back to face him. The question now is whether the Confederation is wise enough to accept this gift, or whether you will force us to demonstrate its more destructive applications. 3 weeks after the revelation of the Invaders protocol, Commander Vextar stood in his command center staring at reports that made no sense. According to his security systems, every member of his command staff was present and accounted for. According to his growing paranoia, any one of them could be a human in disguise. The transformation had been perfect. Too perfect. Lieutenant Kefal approached his station, moving with the same efficient grace she had always shown. But now Vextar found himself studying her movements, looking for subtle signs that might reveal a human infiltrator beneath Zephyrian skin. Sir, we have received new orders from Confederation Command, she reported, offering him a data pad. Vextar took the device but did not immediately read it. Instead, he watched Kefal's face, searching for any sign of deception. Her compound eyes met his gaze with the same professional respect she had always shown. Is there a problem, sir? She asked. How do I know you are really Kefal? He asked quietly. A hurt expression crossed her features. Sir, I have served under your command for 6 cycles. I was with you during the Rigel campaign. I saved your life during the assault on the Theta Station. These were all true facts, easily verified in military records. But Vextar had learned that the human invaders had access to complete intelligence files on every member of his command. They could recite the history of any Zephyrian they chose to replace. Tell me something only the real Kefal would know, he demanded. She looked confused and slightly hurt. Sir, you told me about your childhood fear of water during the long patrol near the Vega system. You made me promise never to mention it to the other officers. Vextar felt a moment of relief. This was not in any official record. But then he remembered that the humans had been monitoring all communications, including private conversations. They might have overheard that confession. The paranoia was eating away at him, and he knew he was not alone. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, officers were beginning to question the identity of their colleagues. Trust, the foundation of military organization, was crumbling. Senior Analyst Kethmos entered the command center, carrying his usual collection of data tablets. He approached Vextar's station with the same methodical precision he had always shown. Commander, I have completed the analysis you requested, he reported. Which analysis? Vextar asked suspiciously. The communication patterns of our fleet personnel, Kethmos replied. You asked me to look for signs of human infiltration. Vextar had indeed requested this analysis, but he had not told anyone about it. He had given the order privately, through encrypted channels that should have been secure. And what did you find? He asked carefully. The results are disturbing, Kethmos said, consulting his data tablets. I have identified 17 members of our command structure who show subtle deviations from normal Zephyrian communication patterns, such as slight changes in vocabulary usage, minor variations in sentence structure, and emotional responses that fall outside normal parameters, Kethmos explained. The differences are small, but consistent with what we might expect from humans attempting to mimic our behavior. Vextar felt his heart's racing. 17 infiltrators? Possibly, Kethmos said. However, there is another possibility, which is that these 17 individuals are the real Zephyrians and everyone else has been replaced. The words hit Vextar like a physical blow. He looked around the command center with new eyes, studying each of his officers. How many of them were still the beings he had served with for years? How many were humans wearing stolen faces? There is more, Kethmos continued. I have detected communications being sent from our fleet using proper Confederation encryption. but the content suggests coordination with human forces on Earth. Show me, Vextar demanded. Kethmos activated a holographic display showing communication logs. The messages appeared to be routine military reports, but when examined closely, they contained subtle references to human objectives and interests. These reports are being sent by members of our own command staff, Kethmos explained, but they are designed to keep human leadership informed of our activities and decisions. Vexitar realized that his fleet was being controlled from within. The humans had not just infiltrated his command structure, they had taken it over so smoothly that he could not tell where. Zephyrian authority ended and human influence began. New report arrived on his command console. It was from Sub-Commander Threndok, requesting permission to implement new security protocols throughout the fleet. The protocols seemed reasonable: enhanced identity verification, regular psychological evaluation, and restricted access to sensitive areas. But as Vextar read the details, he realized that these protocols would give whoever controlled them complete authority over fleet personnel. They could use the security measures to identify and remove anyone who questioned the new order. "Sir," Lieutenant Kefal said, approaching his station again, "Sub-Commander Threndok is requesting an immediate meeting with you. He says it concerns fleet security." Vextar looked at her, trying to determine if this was the real Kefal or a human replacement. The uncertainty was maddening. "Tell him I will meet with him in 1 hour," he said. As Kefal left to deliver the message, Vextar made a decision that surprised even himself. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message to Admiral Chen Wei on Earth. "I request a private meeting," he transmitted. "Just the two of us." The response came within minutes. "Granted. Transport to coordinates I am sending. Come alone." An hour later, Vexistar found himself in a small room deep beneath Earth's surface, facing the human admiral who had somehow outmaneuvered one of the galaxy's most advanced military forces. "You wanted to speak with me," Admiral Chen said. "I need to know how many of my people you have replaced," Vextar said directly. Admiral Chen studied his expression. "Are you asking as a military commander seeking intelligence about enemy infiltration, or as a being trying to understand what has happened to his world?" "Does it matter?" "It does to me," she replied, "because the answer depends on how you define your people." She activated a display showing the current roster of the Zephyrian fleet. Names and faces appeared, each marked with various symbols. "These are the members of your command who have been replaced with invaders," she said, indicating about half the names. "These are the Zephyrians who have chosen to undergo enhancement with human technology to improve their effectiveness. And these are the Zephyrians who remain unchanged." Vextar stared at the display in shock. The majority of his fleet had been either replaced or modified in some way. "But here is what you really need to understand," Admiral Chen continued. "The invaders are not just disguised humans. They are genuinely committed to the roles they have taken. When one of my people becomes a Zephyrian officer, they truly believe in Zephyrian military values and will defend Zephyrian interests." "How is that possible?" "Because we do not see this as conquest," Admiral Chen explained. "We see it as evolution. The invaders do not replace your people. They become your people, but with additional capabilities that serve everyone's interests." She gestured to another display showing improved Zephyrian technology, enhanced tactical doctrines, and more efficient organizational structures. "Your fleet is now more capable than it was before we arrived," she said. "Your officers make better decisions, your technology functions more effectively, and your strategic planning has improved dramatically. Because humans are controlling it," Vextar said bitterly. "Because humans and Zephyrians are working together in ways that maximize the strengths of both species," Admiral Chen corrected. "The invaders think like Zephyrians, but they also retain human creativity and adaptability. They are loyal to Zephyrian interests, but they pursue those interests with human innovation." Admiral Chen stood and walked to a window that looked out onto an underground facility where humans and apparent Zephyrians worked side by side. "Your confederation has spent thousands of years conquering primitive species and forcing them to serve more advanced civilizations," she said. "We offer something different, the chance for species to truly merge their capabilities rather than simply dominating each other." She turned back to face him. "The question you need to ask yourself is not how many of your people we have replaced. The question is whether you want to be part of this evolution or whether you want to be left behind. Vextar looked out at the mixed human-Zephyrian workforce. They moved with efficiency and coordination that surpassed anything he had seen in purely Zephyrian operations. "What happens if I refuse?" he asked. "Then you remain as you are, commanding a fleet that will become increasingly obsolete as the rest of the galaxy adapts to new possibilities," Admiral Chen replied. "Or you return to Confederation space and try to explain to your superiors how a primitive species defeated your forces without firing a shot." She smiled, and Vextar realized that his choice had been made long before he entered this room. "What happens if I accept?" he asked. "Then you become the first Zephyrian to willingly undergo the Invaders protocol transformation," Admiral Chen said. "You become both human and Zephyrian, with the best qualities of both species." As Vextar considered this offer, he realized that humanity had not conquered the Zephyrian Confederation. They had done something far more profound.